Hello, welcome to Crime in Court. I'm Heather, and it seems like since the last video that I put out about Richard Allen, there has been some interest in it, so I wanted to follow up with that video and kind of go back to the Franks memorandum, because that is when this whole thing blew wide open about what mistreatment might be going on with Richard Allen, and this was back when his original lawyers were originally on his case. So Bradley Rosie and Andrew Baldwin were both, this was their original time on the case, and this basically seems to be their defense strategy, which is Richard Allen didn't do it and he's being framed, and here is the allegations and reasons as to why we believe he's being framed. And not only that, but they also have named other potential suspects in the case, and we'll go into those too. I mean, I'm going to read, this is a public document. We're going to read the memorandum in support of the accused's motion for Franks hearing. And the Franks hearing is just what it's called. It's that kind of hearing that they're asking for. And this is where the whole Odinist type of allegations come in, and this is the first time we hear about these allegations that there might be some ties to Odinist, the Odinist religion, beliefs, practices, whatever you want to call it, the CULT. I'm not sure if you can say that on the YouTubes, but yeah, so we're going to do this in parts, so it's not going to be, it is a 136 page document, so we're not going to sit here for all 136 pages. I'm going to break it down into parts. That way we can talk about each section, kind of dive into it and see what this is really saying. So let's begin. The memorandum in support of the accused's motion for Franks hearing comes now the accused Richard Allen by and through counsel Andrew J. Baldwin and Bradley A. Rosie, and files his memorandum in support of his request for a Franks hearing. Introduction. Because the facts of this memorandum are dense for anyone not yet completely familiar with this case, the defense is providing this introductory section similar to the syllabus that often precedes a long and complex U.S. Supreme Court opinion. The purpose of this introductory section is to provide the court a general understanding of what to expect concerning the facts upon which the defense will be relying, and how those facts impact the legal arguments, before providing the necessary detail, minutia, and notation to the record that could bog down the court as it attempts to unpack the defense arguments. So, all that saying, this is an introductory portion to help support the facts, the legal document. They realize it's a long document, but we got to get some background information in there first. The defense, therefore, will provide little attribution as to the source of the evidence of this introductory section. That's because they're trying to save for time's sake, for the judges, for the court's sake, so they don't have to read such a long document. They're going to be as brief as they can be in this document. But they will provide proper attribution to the sources of the evidence throughout the body of the memorandum following the introduction. Okay. So for the court's convenience, the defense has provided a glossary of names that are marked Exhibit 125. The glossary provides the alphabetized list of almost every name mentioned in the memorandum, along with a brief description of their involvement. I'm not sure if that's provided, the exhibit list of all the names, but we definitely have a long ways to go because there's a lot of parts here. As you can see, this is just the table of contents. And I'm just scrolling through it so we can get to the very first part. This is all introductory at this point. So, 8 things to know. This is what the defense attorneys think that we need to know going into this. Overwhelming evidence in this case supports the following. 1. Members of a pagan Norse religion called Odinism hijacked by white nationalists ritualistically unalived Abigail Williams and Liberty German. 2. Very early on, those in charge of the Delphi murder investigation claim that they consulted with a Purdue professor concerning what resembled possible Odinism signatures left behind at the crime scene. After the Purdue professor proclaimed, according to State Trooper Jerry Holman, that it was not Odinism or any type of cult worshipping or any type of group that would have conducted the crime. The Odinism angle was essentially abandoned. However, as of September 7th, 2023, the leaders of the Delphi investigation team, 1, claim that they can't identify who this purported professor was, and 2, have provided no reports from this purported professor, and 3, have further indicated they may never be able to figure out who the professor is. So let's break this down. The state trooper, or the state of Indiana, is stating that there were investigations early on with this Purdue professor that told them it had nothing to do with Odinism and any type of anything that could be related to that. And then we find out that this professor can't be found. They don't remember who it was. Like when the defense team goes to the state and tries to get the information of who is this person, there's nothing. Suddenly the state of Indiana doesn't know who this person is. But they must have been important enough to totally abandon the idea of this because it was thought in the beginning somehow. Anyways, so based in large part upon this mystery Purdue professor's opinion, the Delphi investigative leadership claimed that it essentially abandoned considering Odinite involvement in the Un-Alivings. And then the years passed. So the investigative team says Odinism has nothing to do with this. And now it's 2023. Time has passed. Several years have passed. Thankfully, during those passing years, law enforcement officers Kevin Murphy, Greg Ferenczi, and Todd Click continue to pursue the truth. Because of their curiosity and investigative efforts, the evidence establishing the names of the likely of the likely unaliving members of this Odinite cult became known to the Delphi investigative leadership no later than February 2018. So they've known about this lead, that it could be involved with this cult or religious group or whatever you want to call it. And This was never divulged to the defense, which this could be exculpatory to the defense. So why the defense team never learned about it seems like they were potentially trying to hide it. And then the fact that when they were approached about it and they didn't want to give up the professor's name is very silly to me. Suspicious. All right, so due to either incompetence or a concerted intentionality, I want to make sure that I say that right. Those in charge of the investigation refused to arrest or even properly investigate these obvious suspects. So they're saying these Odinists are definite suspects from the beginning, and they were not followed up on, either intentionally or out of incompetence, out of negligence, perhaps. So, number 3, on May 1st, 2023, the state of Indiana, by way of prosecutor Nick McClelland, received a letter from former Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click, who is now retired. What's our little footnote say? Oh, it just says that he was retired. Okay. So as stated in the previous paragraph, Click, Murphy, and Ferenczi were 3 of the law enforcement officers who worked on the Delphi murder case. I keep saying that word. I don't mean to. Sorry, guys. Sorry, YouTube. Please don't block my videos. It just happens. Like, I can't... This is frustrating. There's a lot of censorship on this channel, or on this platform. Not on my channel, on this platform. And you can't say certain words like this M word that I keep slipping up and saying. So I need to find a swear jar, the YouTube banned word jar, and start charging myself every time I slip. Anyways, all right. So, as stated in the previous paragraph, Click, Murphy, Ferenczi were 3 of the law enforcement officers who worked on this case, particularly focused on the Odinite angle as it intersected with suspects in Rushville, Indiana. After reading Richard Allen's probable cause affidavit, Click became concerned that the information contained in Richard Allen's affidavit pointing the finger at Richard Allen was far less compelling than the totality of the information that Detective Ferenczi, Detective Murphy, and Officer Click had accumulated during the Rushville portion of the investigation. The information that Murphy, Ferenczi, and Click had gathered during their investigation connected men who participated Odinism in or near Delphi with another group of men who lived in Rushville, and then connected both groups of men to the Un-Alivings. Click was concerned that for some reason the leadership of the investigative team had failed to share with Prosecutor McClelland the evidence gathered by Click, Ferenczi, and Murphy. Click's concerns led him to seek out a lawyer to assist him in the drafting of a letter. This letter was sent to McClelland. This letter was not provided to the defense until after it was obvious from the last round of depositions that the defense, who had doggedly pursued witnesses as far away as Georgia, could certainly be talking with Todd Click. So the defense has been very determined in looking for witnesses in this case. They've even gone as far as going to Georgia, the state of Georgia. And this letter that Click wrote was never produced to the defense. So let's see what they say about that. McClelland had this letter in his possession for over 4 months before turning it over to the defense. So that's a long time to have it in your discovery and not turn it over. There could be no mistaking that this letter is exculpatory in nature and could have been used by the defense as it prepared for upcoming depositions. So just the fact that they were holding on to this information for 4 months, it was possibly detrimental to Richard Allen's case because they couldn't prepare properly for deposition. So now they might have to even depose some people again if they find it necessary. All right, so however, it is apparent that McClelland only offered up the letter after it was obvious that the defense team would soon be learning of the letter's existence. In other words, the defense team would obviously be meeting with or deposing Click in the next few weeks. So that's where this comes in. So the defense team's going to be deposing Click, and Click wrote this letter that they're talking about here, referencing some concerns. And apparently the prosecution got wind of the fact that Click was going to be deposed, and before he could call them out, or not call them out, but before it could come out in the deposition before it could come out in the deposition that the defense never received the letter that Click wrote, the prosecution was trying to be proactive by giving it to them, but the defense feels that this was the only reason that they got the letter. All right, so they were deposing Click in the next few weeks. At that time, Click most certainly would then reveal to the defense that in April 2023, he, Click, had sent a letter containing exculpatory information to McClelland. At this point, McClelland had 2 distinct choices. So the Click is who again? Sorry, Click was concerned about the investigation. Officer Click. So it just says Officer Click. We don't. I think these are. So Detective Murphy, Officer Click. What is forensic? I don't know what their titles are. That's all I was looking for. Anyway, so Officer Click has this information that was never turned over to the defense. And the prosecutor, Nick McClelland, has not turned it over. And this is showing that there might be some prosecutorial misconduct, potentially, if he's not turning over discovery that he knows is he's fully aware of exists, but he's not turning it over, which could be exculpatory towards the defendant. That could be misconduct on his end. So at this point, McClelland had 2 distinct choices. 1, sit on the exculpatory evidence, hoping that the defense team would refocus its efforts on another angle of this investigation. Or 2, disclose the exculpatory evidence, claiming that the contents of the letter were overlooked in the volume of discovery. So they could just claim, oh, we didn't see it. We just overlooked it because there was so much discovery. And I am sure that it can be true in a lot of cases, but it can also be an excuse in a lot of cases. So he chose the latter. Unfortunately for the state, neither approach explains away the fact that Click specifically directed the letter to McClelland himself, and further, Click was so determined to ensure his information was consumed by McClelland that he directed the information directly to McClelland via certified mail. So, unpack that. Officer Click sent this letter, certified mail, to Nick McClelland himself. He did not want this to get overlooked. So you can't even say, oh, it got overlooked with all the discovery. So that blows that right out of the water. All right. The letter is stamped, received May 1st, 2023, Carroll County Prosecutor. Click's report landed at ground zero, a prosecutor's office with no more than 2 full-time prosecutors and a handful of full-time staff members at best. Could this exculpatory evidence have been completely overlooked? Not plausible. So they're saying in a prosecutor's office, they have a lot more staff than they do in when it's a defendant's office. Usually public defenders have, it's just them or, 1 or 2 other staff members. Here they're saying they have all this full-time staff. There's no way that it got looked over in Nick McLeland's office. Not only did the prosecution withhold the letter from the defense, but law enforcement also withheld several other exculpatory pieces of evidence, including an 85-page compilation of reports by Click prepared in 2019 and several videos containing statements that support the defense theory of Richard Allen's innocence. This 85-page report details the investigative work performed by Click, Ferenczi, Murphy, and others, including the FBI. All right, so they got a lot of hands and people, eyes, hands, people on this particular case that potentially knew that there was more to this case than meets the eye originally. Because we've got these officers and some FBI agents, and we never got to the meat of it if there was this angle, this Odinist angle. So according to the summary of Click's investigation that he attached with his letter, quote, the Behavioral Analysis Unit of the FBI determined that the individuals responsible for the Un-Alivings were involved in Nordic beliefs. End quote. This was news to the defense, as no member of the unified command in charge of the investigation revealed this information to the defense during recent depositions. So everyone was tight-lipped about this. This includes Trooper Holman, who told the defense that he didn't remember if the FBI's BAU unit determined one way or the other whether those with Nordic beliefs had been involved in the Un-Alivings. So Trooper Holman specifically, unequivocally told the defense he didn't remember if it had anything to do with these Un-Alivings or not. This way of believing these Nordic beliefs, this Odinist angle. He didn't know, couldn't remember. At least up until the time of the filing, the prosecution had provided no evidence whatsoever of the findings of the FBI's BAU unit concerning involvement of Odinists in the Un-Alivings. None. The letter that Click sent to McLeland was the first that the defense has heard that the FBI actually believed that Odinists were likely involved. So even the FBI believes this. And this is the first that the defense is finding out. 4 months after Prosecutor McLeland. In other words, the report contained exculpatory evidence that Unified Command concealed from the defense. This information was and is crucial for Richard Allen's defense. Some of this exculpatory evidence in the form of videos was finally released to the defense on September 8th, 2023, over 9 months after the defense counsel entered their appearance. So some of this information, some of the exculpatory evidence, the prosecution had in their hands already, and by the time the defense came on and was showed their appearance in court, became on the record as Richard Allen's attorneys, 9 months went by, and the prosecution never handed it over. The defense is still reviewing this September 8th evidence dump. In the brief time the defense has had to review this newly received evidence, it has found exculpatory evidence both in the videos the defense has watched and the documents that the defense has reviewed. While the prosecution has been holding on to the exculpatory evidence, Richard Allen has been living in hell. Lastly, the evidence, we'll get more into that. And we did talk about that in a more recent video where my dog's nails are clicking on the floor because he's having a nightmare. I don't know if you guys can hear it. In another recent video that I did of Richard Allen, we talked about his the mistreatment that he's suffering at the prison that he's in now. He's in maximum, or I don't know if it's maximum security prisons or what, but it's more security prisons than a county jail. They have much more security and more hoops to jump through, and they're not adequately prepared for a defendant that is preparing to go to trial. And that was listed in one of the recent motions that we talked about. All right, so lastly, the evidence will show that the week of August 28th, 2023, Prosecutor McClelland and State Trooper Jerry Holman requested a meeting with Todd Click. By this time, the defense team had taken several depositions, including Holman, Liggett, and Lisenby. We'll talk about them later. And the prosecution and Delphi investigative leadership now knew that for a while the defense team had been aware of the Odinist evidence, at least the evidence that the prosecution turned over to the defense scattered throughout multiple hard drives and many flash drives. So they're trying to make, or allegedly, it could be argued that they're trying to make it more difficult to find by scattering it out through different evidence, or through all the discovery, so that it's harder to find this evidence, this exculpatory evidence that they're looking for. So the prosecution had learned in early August that the defense had figured out the strong Odinist ties to the crimes, despite the apparent attempts of the prosecution, Liggett and Holman, to hide this exculpatory information from the defense. Wanting to allay his fears that an innocent man was sitting in Westville, Click agreed to attend the meeting with Holman, hoping that he would be learning that evidence did in fact exist, linking Richard Allen to the murders. Okay, so Click agreed to attend the meeting with Holman, hoping that they would learn of evidence that linked Richard Allen to the Un-Alivings. Click's hopes were dashed. Paragraph 17 of Click's affidavit. Upon directing the letter to Mr. McClelland, I heard nothing from the prosecutor's office or any other members of Unified Command until I received phone calls on August 23rd and August 25th of last year, which involved brief discussions regarding scheduling. During these phone calls, it was requested that I meet with Trooper Holman during the week of September 4th, 2023. I was informed that law enforcement officials intended to sit down with me and discuss with me the reasons why Richard Allen was responsible for these crimes. I was told that he, Jerry Holman, wanted to put my mind at ease. However, during the meeting with Detective Holman and Second Detective, whose name I am unfamiliar with, there was no discussion or offerings as to why they believed Richard Allen was guilty of the charged crimes. I believe the interview was an attempt by them to clean up their loose ends, knowing that they had given very little, if any, attention to the investigative efforts of myself, Detective Ferenczi, and Detective Murphy. Emphasis added means that the attorneys here wrote, I believe the interview was an attempt by them to clean up their loose ends, meaning they were trying to hide this and they got caught. So they're trying to continue to hide it. Not only did Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett fail to include all this Odinite information in his October 13th, 2022 affidavit for search warrant, and not only did McClelland and the Unified Command withhold exculpatory evidence, Liggett also concealed damaging witness statements that devastate Liggett's timeline. A timeline Liggett needed to be true in order to place Richard Allen at the trail when Abby and Libby were taken. So it seems like they might even be messing with the timeline, allegedly. Additionally, Liggett lied. That's just coming out there and saying it. Liggett lied in his affidavit about the statements of another key witness, further devastating Liggett's timeline. So, misrepresented. We'll say he misrepresented, but it could appear like a lie. We'll see. We'll see what they say. All right. So Richard Allen has zero connections to any pagan cult or pagan cultists, meaning he doesn't know people in a CULT. And furthermore, no forensic evidence such as DNA or electronic evidence links Richard Allen to the girls or to the crime scene, i.e., he is a completely innocent man. So no evidence links Richard Allen to the scene. And he has no ties to the Odinists. All right, so most of the evidence backing these assertions was found scattered over no less than 10 hard drives and several flash drives provided by the prosecution, meaning that the defense is not making wild accusations, but rather primarily relaying facts and information that is backed up by the prosecution's own discovery, even discovery that the prosecution just provided to the defense as late as September 8, 2023. And remember, these Un-Alivings happened in 2018. So, years later. Not coincidentally, members or Odinists of the same pagan CULT are employed as corrections officers for the Indiana Department of Corrections at Westville Correctional Facility. It is inside of the cold concrete walls of the maximum security. Okay, so it is a maximum security unit of this dilapidated reformatory that Richard Allen is being threatened, intimidated, and mentally harmed. Down here it says the defense counsel is not saying that the Westville guards were involved in the Un-Alivings, only that they were likely involved in threatening, intimidating, and harming Richard Allen mentally. All right, so throughout this document, references are made to the Unified Command. Essentially, the Unified Command was the leadership of the Delphi investigation. According to Tony Liggett, Carroll County Sheriff and member of Unified Command when the investigation began. So that's what, according to Tony Liggett, that's what that means. It's basically the leadership anytime we talk about the Unified Command. Unified Command consisted of law enforcement from a variety of entities, local, state, and federal. Unified Command were overseers of the entire investigative operation. According to Liggett, the members of the Unified Command are/were from Carroll County, Tony Liggett and Kevin Hammond, from State Police, Jerry Holman, Jay Harper, and Dave Vito, and from the FBI, Rich Davies. All right. Let me take a sip of water here. So now we're going to get into a little background about what the what Odinites believe and how it ties in. Or rather, what the Odinist evidence, or what the evidence is that links to Odinist worship. So Odinism is the pagan religion referenced above, and its followers are called Odinites. Odinists or Odinists. Odinists are enamored of Viking and Nordic culture. Evidence supports that at the crime scene, these unaliving Odinites left behind obvious signatures or symbols in the form of runes. So these runes were 1, formed with sticks, and 2, fashioned with tree branches, and 3, painted using the red liquid DNA of Liberty German. I don't think you can say that word. Sticks and tree branches were deliberately, carefully, and proficiently placed on each girl in a certain arrangement mimicking certain runes. At least one of the branches appeared to have its end cut off cleanly by some type of tool. So it was most likely trimmed by man-made. They were man-made markings. It was not like a tree branch that just fell. Somebody cut it down because they used an electric saw or something like that, providing proof of a preconceived plan. So if somebody brought an electric saw to the scene, you would think maybe they were planning this out. Additionally, the red DNA of Liberty German was used as the paint to mark a tree with a rune that looks similar to the letter F. I wish I had pictures for this. I'll have them ready for next time. I don't want to make you guys sit here and wait while I look them up. All right, so with a simple Google search, these runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this pagan religious group. Yet, law enforcement in charge of the Delphi investigation seemingly and quickly abandoned the obvious correlation between the crime scene and Odinism, despite an obscene amount of evidence linking Odinism to the crime scene. And even in spite of powerful evidence linking specific Odinites in and around Indiana to the Un-Alivings. Also, the court will learn in this affidavit in his affidavit for search warrant that Sheriff Liggett failed to inform Judge Diener that nothing, absolutely nothing, links Richard Allen to Odinism or any other religious cult. Also, no forensics such as DNA, no electronic data extracted from his computers or phones or from his social media links Richard Allen to the crime scene. So there really is nothing that they can find that links him to this crime scene. Additionally, nothing links Richard Allen to any of the Odinite suspects, the same Odinite suspects that evidence strongly supports unalived Abby and Libby in some sort of pagan ritual. Richard Allen has nothing to do with this crime, but rather is an innocent man, a patsy for the police, arrested 26 days before an election. So that's an interesting allegation to make, that he was perhaps arrested before someone got reelected. Failure to pursue the Odinist links. So now we have proof that they were not looked into, these leads. Law enforcement's failure to actively pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is confounding. It is even more confounding when days and weeks after the murders, a particular Odinite from Logansport named Brad Holder posted on social media images mimicking the very runes found at the crime scene. So days and weeks after the murders. A crime scene Oh, this was a crime scene that was unreleased and unknown to the general public, even to this day. So, for the fact that his pictures on his social media are mimicking the same rune shapes that were possibly strewn over the girls' bodies, it's a real huge coincidence. Real huge. All right, so this guy, who is he? Let's look. So who is Brad Holder? He was an Odinite whose son Logan had been dating, I don't know what that's in quotes, quote unquote, dating Abby. Brad Holder's social media posts seemingly taunted the very police that refused to fully investigate him. The defense believes that the court will be shocked at the number of clues or Easter eggs, both before and after the Un-Alivings, that Holder openly posted on his Facebook page that pointed the finger to his involvement. However, a fact that is simply mind-blowing to the defense is that Brad Holder was never considered a suspect in the Un-Alivings of Abby and Libby. State Trooper Jerry Holman, one of the law enforcement officers in charge of organizing and investigating the Delphi Un-Alivings, claimed in his August 10th, 2023 deposition that Brad Holder was not really ever a suspect. Police reports written near the time of the Un-Alivings reveal that Jerry Holder is telling the truth. Brad Holder was cleared as a suspect quickly on March 16, 2027. On March 1st, 2027, Tony Liggett stated in a report that there were no leads required concerning Brad Holder, meaning that it was not necessary for law enforcement to continue to look for leads related to Brad Holder. So Liggett's looking at Holder. Liggett made the determination a mere 15 days after the girls were unalived. By March 16, 2023, Unified Command member Kevin Hammond wrote that Brad Holder has been cleared. Unquote. So what? So within 15 days, he is being told he was cleared when originally they're looking for him. Like they're looking at leads related to him. All right. So Liggett, I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys? He got completely cleared by the 16th, which is just a month. Oh, no, wait. By March 2023. Not a month. Sorry. This is 2023. But they knew whoops, I did not mean to do that. But that's okay. All right, so the girls hadn't been dead for 30 days and Unified Command... Oh, that is a mistake. That's supposed to be 17. I did read that right. Okay, so that is supposed to be 17. The girls hadn't been unalived for 30 days and Unified Command had already cleared Brad Holder as a suspect. Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect within 30 days, knowing that Brad Holder's son had dated Abby. Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect within 30 days, although a simple review of Brad Holder's Facebook page would show that he, Brad Holder, was a proud Odinite that had an absolute obsession and fascination with runes. Police knew, or had to know, that runes had been left at the crime scene. Additionally, Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect in spite of the fact that runes found on Brad Holder's Facebook pages mimicked runes found at a crime scene. So they knew this. Unified Command had already cleared him, even though he had Facebook pages that mimicked the crime scene. A crime scene that was not ever released to the public. The investigation had barely begun, but the Unified Command had already cleared the very man that any person with even a small amount of common sense or curiosity would believe was a strong candidate for being involved in the Un-Alivings. For example, the court will also learn that the Unified Command was aware of a very disturbing image of Brad Holder's social media accounts that actually mimicked the crime scene. On April 12th, 2017, Trooper Joseph Ryan Winters received a phone call from a man in Georgia named Ryan Boucher, I don't know, who had discovered disturbing images in Brad Holder's social media account. So this guy, Trooper, received a call from a man in Georgia who had discovered some disturbing images in Brad Holder's social media. So having somehow learned that Brad Holder's son, Logan, had dated Abby Williams, Mr. Boucher began reviewing Brad Holder's social media history. One of the images that Boucher viewed on Brad Holder's social media account was an image of two women either dead or posed as if they were dead on the ground in what appeared to be a forest. So both women had tree limbs and sticks around their bodies. One of the women had her arms stretched out above her head, similar to the way that Libby's arm was stretched above her head. Both women were clothed, and the stick and tree branch formations on the girls was different than the stick and tree branch formations on Abby and Libby, but otherwise it bore a very eerie similarity to the crime scene in Delphi. So Ryan Boucher, I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm saying it both ways because I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. Boucher, sorry. So he had no knowledge of the actual crime scene. However, after reviewing Brad Holder's social media sites, Boucher was disturbed at that image, as well as other images that provided insight into Brad Holder's fascination with runes. Believing that the disturbing images may be something of interest to those investigating the Delphi murders, Mr. Boucher contacted Tobe Lesenby, who at the time was the sheriff of Carroll County. So the Carroll County sheriff was contacted by this man in Georgia who saw these disturbing images that are related to Brad Holder's account, his Facebook account, and it has to do with his fascination with runes and laying sticks out in rune fashion to fashion the shape of runes on people's bodies. All right, so Lesenby quickly rebuffed Boucher, telling Boucher that Holder was not a suspect. Undeterred, Mr. Boucher contacted the state police, where he ended up talking to Trooper Joseph Ryan Winters. After their conversation, Winters memorialized the interaction and placed the images provided by Boucher into a Dropbox account. After creating the report, Winters then discussed his findings face-to-face with Jerry Holman of Unified Command. The body of this memorandum will provide details of that interaction. All right, so we'll find out what happened there. In his report, Winters requested law enforcement to re-interview Brad Holder. And they're telling this. So basically, multiple people are telling law enforcement, you've got leads on this guy. There's good leads on Brad Holder. Go interview him. Go find out. Just look into it. But they're being told, no, he's not a suspect. But it's not helping because nobody's satisfied with that answer. The people who are noticing that he might have some involvement. So the defense does not believe Unified Command ever followed up on Winters' request. It should be noted that the disturbing images found by Boucher in Georgia and placed in a Dropbox by Winters were not, and have still not, been provided to the defense. In his recent deposition, Winters said that he had attempted to locate the images but was unable. However, because of the potential importance of those images to Richard Allen's case, the defense team located Boucher and then traveled to Georgia. So the defense team themselves traveled to Georgia to meet with him because they weren't getting it from the prosecution. Those images are now in the possession of Richard's defense team, who then provided those images to law enforcement. Again, these were important images that law enforcement failed to turn over to the defense. Instead, the defense located these images in Georgia and then turned them over to the very people who had the obligation to provide them to the defense. I was going to say something I forgot. All right, sorry. Unified Command, which included Tony Liggett, who drafted the affidavit for search warrant, was fully aware of the mimicked crime scene on Brad Holder's social media, as well as other posts that mimicked the exact runes found at the crime scene, but failed to do anything about it and failed to inform Judge Diener of this obvious suspect, Brad Holder, and all of the evidence that existed against Holder, making him a prime suspect. So there's all this evidence. We've got great evidence supporting that we can show this guy might be a good suspect. Our guy in custody, he has no ties to the victims. He has no ties to Odinists. He has no ties to the crime scene. But this guy right here, he's got a lot of ties and a lot of reasons to believe that he could be a suspect. That's what the defense team, that's what Richard Allen's defense team is stating in here. It sounds unbelievable, I know, but bear with me. Stick it out through all of my episodes. I'm not sure how many parts I'm going to do. I was thinking 4, but we're already an hour in and we're only 14 pages in, so it might be a little bit more than 4. But I think if you stick with me and you hear what they have to say and listen to all the evidence, you might be surprised about your thoughts on this case if you're not already familiar with what's happening here. So I'm going to read just a few more pages maybe and then call it quits for now. So anyways, the court will learn in the body of the memorandum that Holder was connected to the crime scene, and to 2 other men who had confessed to the crime. The evidence of those connections will be provided in the body of this memorandum. So as we read, we'll learn more about that, including copies of the images found on Holder's Facebook page at the time of the investigation, which link Holder to the crime scene, as well as the images found on Ryan Boucher's, found by Ryan Boucher, that law enforcement has failed to turn over to the defense. So all of those images they provided in this memorandum. The defense will also attach what the defense calls the Winters report, which is a memorialization of Trooper Winters' interaction with Ryan Boucher. Liggett provided none of the evidence or information to Judge Diener. I always want to say Diener, but it's Diener, I think. That's what Bob Motta of the Defense Diaries calls him. That's how he pronounces it. But rather allowed Judge Diener to believe that Richard Allen was a lone suspect in the murders in spite of 0 evidence linking Richard Allen to the crimes at the time Liggett sought the search warrant 26 days before an election. Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is even more perplexing when evidence known to law enforcement demonstrated a clear nexus between Brad Holder and at least 4 other suspects. Elvis Fields from Rushville, Patrick Westfall from Delphi, Johnny Messer from Rushville, and Rod Abrams from Rushville, now living in Connorsville. So all those people have involvement. There are links. There's evidence that could link all of them possibly to this case. And they all have Odinist ties. And Brad Holder is the thing that connects them all. So he's in the center of it all, is what they are arguing. Unified Command was aware that Elvis Fields confessed to his sister that he, Elvis, was involved in the Un-Alivings, even providing to his sister intimate crime scene details of which only those present at the crime scene would have familiarity. Additionally, Elvis Fields told his sister, Mary, on February 14th, 2017, so this is the day of? I believe it's the day of, right? Or the day after? So this is Elvis Fields told his sister, Mary, on February 14th, 2017, that he was present at the Un-Alivings and that he, Elvis, now had a, quote, brother and was part of a, quote, gang. In February 2018, Elvis had been questioned by law enforcement but denied involvement in the murders. However, after being dropped off at his trailer following the questioning, Elvis turned around, walked back to the police car, and, according to the police report, asked the state trooper if Elvis's spit is found on one of the girls, but he could explain it away, would he still be in trouble? What? So he asked Elvis, this guy who has connections with Brad Holder and has Odinist ties, and confessed to his sister Mary that he was there. This guy Elvis asked the police, the state trooper, it says, after being dropped off at his trailer from following the questioning, law enforcement, dropped him off, and as he was walking back to his trailer, he walked back to the police car, and according to the police report, asked the state trooper if his spit was found on the girls, but he had an excuse, if he could explain it away, would he still get in trouble? I don't know how you can explain that away. I don't even know what that means. The state trooper that heard Elvis utter these words, Kevin Murphy, was not part of Unified Command, but immediately relayed Elvis's disturbing question to Jay Harper of Unified Command. So someone who's not in Unified Command heard this and reported it to Unified Command, reported it to the leadership of the investigation. Elvis told Joyce, Elvis also admitted to a different sister. Yes. Elvis also admitted to a different sister, Joyce, that he had in fact spit on one of the girls. Elvis told Joyce that he, Elvis, was on the trail and a bridge with two girls that were unalived and that he was going away for a long time. Elvis's alibi for February 13th, 2017, that's the day that the unalivings or the disappearance of the girls happened. Their bodies were not found until the 14th, but the unalivings happened or at least the taking of them happened that day. So Elvis's alibi for that day, the day of the takings, is probably flawed. State troopers who weren't part of Unified Command determined that Elvis's roommate concocted a story concerning Elvis's whereabouts on February 13th, 2017. This roommate is named Rod Abrams. Abrams, that's the other guy that was just named above, that has a connection to Brad Holder. So Abrams told a story claiming on February 13th, 2017, that he, Rod Abrams, Elvis Fields, and a man named Ned Seth were visiting a sick friend in Muncie. Unfortunately for Rod Abrams, this story conflicted with the story that Elvis Fields told law enforcement as to Elvis's whereabouts on February 13th, 2017. So they can't both be they can't be together, but in different places. So these shady alibis were relayed to Unified Command. These shady alibis will be further explained in the body of the memorandum. Furthermore, Unified Command knew that on February 1st, 2018, Elvis's sister passed a polygraph examination when asked if she were telling the truth about what Elvis had confessed to her. So she passed a polygraph, even though polygraphs are junk science. I don't believe in them, but she passed it, and meaning that what she was telling investigators about Elvis's confessions to her, they were true. So Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is even more inexplicable when evidence known to law enforcement included information about another Odinite named Patrick Westfall, who was living in Delphi, very close to the crime scene. Caught myself in the middle of the word there. On February 13th. It's not like I'm trying to say the word. It's just that I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with word, but people find it offensive, or YouTube finds it offensive. I don't know. So you can't say that. Evidence known to Unified Command included the facts that fellow Odinites Patrick Westfall and Brad Holder were close friends as late as January 21st, 2017. So this is kind of important because that shows their ties. However, that friendship ended very abruptly in February 2017. So potentially after an event that occurred in February 2017, these two are no longer friends. So the schism in their friendship resulted from a fight that occurred between Holder and Westfall in February 2017, where, quote, he, Holder, and Westfall were in the woods near a river conducting a ritual. One of them said or did something the other did not agree with, and they no longer talked to each other. The river was near Patrick's house, end quote. All right. An intoxicated Brad Holder shared this disturbing information with his ex-wife, Amber Holder. Amber Holder then relayed this disturbing information to law enforcement, who were not a part of Unified Command in 2019. These officers then relayed this disturbing information to Unified Command. Liggett concealed this information from Judge Diener. All right, so how much more do we have here? Because I think I'm going to end it there for now. We'll stop there, and hopefully you guys find this interesting. I think some of these filings from court just baffle my mind. Like, they are so much more interesting than reading a novel. Just the things that happen, and especially lately with a lot of these big high profile cases, there's been a lot of crazy stuff happening. So it's very interesting to watch and to keep an eye out on these things, especially when there could be corruption involved. It's always interesting to keep an eye on cases that are in the media that have a twist or a turn that we're not quite expecting. I know we haven't gotten through we haven't even gotten through a fourth of this, but I I want to stop here because I did another recording today. My voice is kind of tired. I have some other things I got to get to before the end of the day. So I'm going to stop here and share it with you guys. Hopefully, if you guys have questions about this case or want me to deep dive into other things about it, please, feel free to put comments down below. Let me know what interests you about this case, what surprises you about this reading. It's very intriguing, to say the least. You think that our judicial system is supposed to be on the up and up, and we're supposed to have sworn officers of the law and of the court that are supposed to abide by certain oaths. And it's interesting that we're seeing a lot of corruption lately that is taking that. We're seeing a lot of corruption lately that in these high profile cases. And I'm wondering if it's because there are a lot more internet sleuths. There's people like you out there who like to learn all they can about these cases. And I really think that has a profound effect on, really uncovering the darkness that, all the areas in our organizations and our institutions that for so many years have just been in the dark, and for so many years have been treated as, let's just go with status quo. Let's just keep going. It's always been done that way. It might not be fair, but we're just going to keep doing it that way, because why stop and question why we do something the way we're doing it? I really think that has a lot to do with why things are being exposed nowadays. Let me know your thoughts on this, because I would really be curious to know why we're seeing so much corruption taking place. Has it always been there and we just never saw it? Or is it's always been there and it's been covered up by, entities that, even mass media likes to spin things and twist stories and vilify our suspects before they get that guilty verdict from a jury of their peers. The media and the public vilifies these people and acts that treats them as monsters. And I think that has to come to an end. And those days are coming to an end. And by being able to look at these cases and having public transparency, we're able to start to unravel this. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts that I've been having. Let me know what you think about it. And be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Take care.